Today's daf is daf tzadi beis, and we're continuing a little bit further in the Agadita, and we start on the second line. The end of the second line, we're again dealing with Yaakov's encounter and his wrestling match with the Malach, and we're quoting a pasuk here in in uh, in Parshas in Sefer Bereshis. It says, "Vayasar el Malach." Vayuchal bacha vaischanin lo. So there are a lot of pronouns here. We don't know who's talking to who. There was a struggle for supremacy with an angel, and he triumphed. Who's the he? He wept. Who wept? And beseeched him. Who beseeched whom? Any odea mi nasa sar lemi. Right, the word sar here, vayosar, which means supremacy, we don't know who became the master of whom. Shu omer ki sarisa, and now the angel says to Yaakov Avinu that you have sarisa, that you're the one who had supremacy. And then it says im Elohim v'im anoshim. We'll see what that means later on. Anyway, it's clear that it was Yaakov who had supremacy over the Malach, and he triumphed. And Bacha Vaischanin Lo, and who was it that was crying and beseeched him? Any Odemi Bachlo. Kshu Omer Vayomer Shalcheni, the angel said when dawn broke, please send me away. Have you Omer Malach Bachal Yaakov? It was the angel that was beseeching Yaakov to let him go. He was crying, so to speak, because he had been defeated. Now, the Gemara offers another possibility. In the pasuk, it says, "Ki sarisa im Elohim v'im anoshim." Omar Rabba remez ramaz lo shasidim shnei sarim lotzeis mimenu. Right, the Torah has here in this pasuk both Elohim and Anoshim. And that teaches me that there were two sarim here means leaders or princes or governmental appointees that were destined to emerge from Yaakov. Who are these two princes? Number one, Rosh Hagolah Shebebavel. Number two, Nasi Sheberetz Yisrael. So we have the Nasi in Eretz Yisrael, and in Eretz Yisrael, it was Hillel who came from Beis David, his descendants. And this all took place for a full century before Churban Abayis until the middle of the 4th century. And the capacity of a Navi was such that each one served as the head of the Sanhedrin and the foremost leader of the Jewish people in Eretz Yisrael. In the case of Bavel, the non-Jewish government granted a certain limited autonomy to the Jewish people, and the exilarch, otherwise known as the Reish Galusa, was also from Beis David, from the Davidic line, lineage. However, those who had smicha, they really came under the authority of the Nasi. Those who apparently were not on that same level, they had to come under the authority of the Reish Galusa. And apparently the smicha was an unbroken chain of ordination that went back all the way to Moshe Rabbeinu in Eretz Yisrael. But in Bavel, it was not allowed by the government that they would confer smicha. And it could be that even according to Jewish law, they couldn't confirm smicha. And there's a great deal of authority as someone who has smicha in both Dini Momenos and even in Dini Nefashos, and those who had smicha were called Elohim in the biblical language. So amongst the descendants of Yaakov Avinu, we have princely families that fit under both these categories. Mikan, says the Gemara, Remez or Ramazlo Golos. Now, the fact that there would be an exilarch, meaning a Rosh Galusa, means Golos, that the Jewish people would go into Golos. This was alluded to Yaakov Avinu. Okay, then the next part of the daf is going to offer, I think it's 8 different interpretations of 3 words that appear in the Torah in the dream of the Saramashkim. And what are those words? It says, Uvagefen Shlosha Sarigim. So we're talking about a grapevine, and Sarigim means branches. So the 3 branches in the grapevine. That's what the Sarmashkim sees in his dream. So we start with Reb Chia bar Abba Marav. And what are these 3 Srigim, or branches? Elu Shlosha Sare Geim Hayotzim Yisrael B'chol Dor V'Dor. Apparently, in every generation, there are nobles that belong to 3 different kingships that are inclined favorably to the people of Israel. They're wealthy and politically connected individuals, and they'll help, give support to Israel. Pa'amim sheshnaim kan v'echad b'Eretz Yisrael. Pa'amim shnayim b'Eretz Yisrael v'echad kan. Also, we're not yet, I jumped the gun a little bit, we're not yet up to the nobles of the Goyim. Now we're talking about the nobles of the Jewish people, who, as we said before, were wealthy and politically connected Jewish individuals. They would support their government, their brethren before the government, and so forth. So there were all told 3 in every generation. Sometimes there were 2 in Bavel and 1 in Eretz Yisrael. Sometimes there were 2 in Eretz Yisrael and 1 in Bavel. Yehivu Rabbanan Einayu B'Rabbana Ukva V'Rabbana Nechemya B'nei Bratia Derav. So these are the descendants of Rav, whether it's Rabbana Ukva or Rabbana Nechemya, and they were the sons of the daughter of Rav, and they fit this description of those wealthy, politically connected Jewish individuals who would present the Jewish interests to the, to the government. These are the branches of the grapevine. So that's number 1. Now we get to number 2. Rava Omar Elu Shlosha Sari Goyim Shavlamdim Schus Al Yisrael B'chol Dover. So as I said before, I had jumped the gun. There will always be Sari Goyim. Now, what does that mean, Sari Goyim? So if you translate it literally, you're talking about the princes of the Goyim. But no, that's not what we're referring to, but rather we're referring to the angels that administer, because every nation has a malach that administers over it. So there'll be 3 nations in every generation whose ministering angels will speak favorably on behalf of and support the Jewish people, like Huckabee, somebody. Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, Rabbi Eliezer Omer Geffen. Okay, so again, we're going back to the Saramashkim's dream, and he describes what we said was Geffen Shlosha Sarigim. So the Geffen Zeh Ha'olam. That alludes to the world itself. And the Shlosha Sarigim the three branches of the world itself, of like the universe, of creation, is Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Now, this is a little bit strange because when the divine being shows a dream to someone, it's meant to tell that person about the future. Here we're going back in time to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, so it's a little bit dachuk. Vehi kiporachas also nitza, and again, this is another pasuk I believe in. One second, where? Give me just a second here. Okay, I don't know. I'm having trouble here with this particular edition of the Gemara, but I think this is all part of the pasuk in Bereshis Perek Mem, I think. Okay, so we're talking like a bud on a fruit that blossoms, and that's an allusion, says the Brisa, to the Mahos. So I guess that we're seeing from this bud like 4 branches coming out. Anyway, then it says, "If shilu ashkaloseh anovim ilu shvatim." So this is an allusion to the 12 shvatim. Omolo Rabbi Yeshua, v'chimar lo la'odam mashachoya. God reveals a dream with a vision of that which was in the past. Hello, ein marim lo la'odam ela mashachosid lios. Ela, but rather gefen zet Torah. And of course, we're talking about the period of history before Matan Torah. Shlosha Sarigim Elu, Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. These were the people from that family that taught Torah, that transmitted Torah. And Vehi Kiporachas also Nitza, Elu Sanhedrin. Now, why is it that from the buds come, the fruit that alludes to Sanhedrin? That I'm not sure, but in any event, Sanhedrin is in charge of paskening, of Horah, of deciding Jewish law. If Shilu Ashkiloseh, right? So the most important part of a vineyard is the ashkolas. That's the grapes themselves. Now, that's the most important. Elu tzadikim sheb'chol dor v'dor. Omer Rab Gamliel. Adayin tzrichen olam odoi. We still need the explanation of the modoi. That's Rabbi Elazar came from modoi. The advantage of Rabbi Elazar, as we'll soon see, is that according to his interpretation about this gefen, everything takes place in one location. Kula b'chad mokum, in the mokum hamigdash. And if you see a gefen and you're talking about the different parts of the gefen, the buds and the grapes and so forth, the branches, then it should refer to one place. All the gefen is in one place. And how does Rabbi Elazar Modoi interpret this vision, this dream? Gefen ze Yerushalayim, shlosha sarigim ze migdash melech v'kohen gadol. The Kiporachas also nitza elu pirchei kahuna, and hivshilu eshkoloseh novim elu nisachim. So all these are in the same location in the Beis Hamikdash. In fact, the Kohen Gadol you see, the Mikdash is the Mikdash, and certainly Nesachim belongs to the Mikdash. young Kohanim belong to the Mikdash. I'm not sure. Melech and Kohen Gadol might refer to Yerushalayim. Rav Yeshua ben Levi Mokim Le b'matanos. We're going to interpret this pasuk in a different way. We're talking about different matanos that God bestowed upon the Jewish people. Rav Yeshua Gefen Zu Torah, Shlosha Sarigim Zebe'er Amud Anan Uman. These are the three miraculous experiences that provided and maintained sustenance for the Jewish people in the 40 years in the desert. The air was b'schus Miriam, the Amud Anan was b'schus Aaron, the man was b'schus Moshe Rabbeinu. The Hi Kipporach is also Nisa Elu HaBikurim. Right, so if we're talking about leaving the Midbar and entering into Eretz Yisrael, we have the mitzvah of Bikurim. And Novim Elu Nisachim, we get back to Nisachim. So I believe that's number 5. Number 6, Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba Amar Gefen Elu Yisrael. Right, the people of Israel are compared to a Gefen. Where do we see that the people of Israel are compared to a Gefen? Gefen miMitzrayim Tasia. So David HaMelech says in Tehillim, hey, he says that you caused the grapevine to journey out of Mitzrayim. Tasia means redeemed from Mitzrayim. And the Gefen is obviously referring to Yisrael. Shlosha Sarigim Elu Shlosha Regolim Sh'Yisrael Olam Bahen B'chol Shana V'Shana. So we view these branches as the kind of the roads that led to Yerushalayim 3 times in the 3 regolim when they went on Aliyah to Yerushalayim. V'hi kiporachas also nitza higia zmanam shel Yisrael lifros v'lirvos. So again, if we're referring back to the Jewish people in Mitzrayim, then we know it says at the beginning of Sefer Shmos that Vayifritzu Vayishpru they multiply. Chenu Omer Bnei Yisrael Paru Vayishritzu. Here's the pasuk. Also Nitza Higia Zmanam Shel Yisrael Yigoel. So the embryonic fruit, the Nitza, right? A Nitza is the beginning of the fruit, the bud, came forth, and that's an allusion to the time that has arrived for Klal Yisrael to be redeemed from Mitzrayim. V'chenu Omer v'yez nitzcham al begadi v'chol malbushi agalti. This is a pasuk in Yeshayahu and Navi, in a passage that portrays God's future vengeance for Edom's persecution of the Jews. God is portrayed as a warrior returning from Edom with blood-sullied garments. The Gemara learns from this verse that the term nitzach or nitzcham is a reference to the lifeblood of those who subjugated the Jewish people maliciously. God caused to spurt that blood life at the time of the redemption. Hivshilu eshkol seo anovim higia zmanam shel Mitzrayim lishtos kos hatarel. So this concept of kos tarela is called a kos of wrath that would be used to drink, to give drink to the enemies of the Jewish people when God redeems the people of Israel. And that's the punishment. So the ripened clusters of grapes in the machzeh of the Saramashkim the grapes were squeezed into Pharaoh's wine cup, a symbolic of the punishment that Mitzrayim will incur at the time of the Yetziah of Mitzrayim. Why does the Torah repeat itself 3 times, referring to the kosos in the dream of the Saramashkim? Rashi quotes the pasuk. It says 3 times kosos. Echad sheshasa b'mei Moshe. Moshe, in his time, when the Mitzrayim were destroyed in the Makas B'choros and in the Yam Suf, then that was their drink from the cup of wrath. Echad, another cup of wrath, alludes to Shasavi made Paro Necho, and Paro Necho was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar. Okay. The Echad in the third cup, Asidim Lishtos Kolov de Kochofim. That eventually all the idolaters at the time of the Mashiach will drink the cup of wrath. Amalei Rabbi Abel Rabbi Yirmi. Ki dorish lehu Rav lahani kroy v'agadato. You should listen carefully when Rav expounds these verses homiletically when he's trying to interpret the symbolic meaning of the details of the dream of the Sarmashkim. Kavosek dorish le, because you know what, Rav is right in homiletically interpreting these verses as referring to the exodus of the Jewish people from Egypt. Number 7, Reb Shimon ben Lakish, Umazu ki gefen nimshlo, the nation of Israel are compared to a grapevine. And we already quoted a pasuk that David HaMelech in Tehillim says that you caused the grapevine to journey out of Egypt. And Zmoros Sheba, right? The grapevine is made up of branches. Elu Bale Batin. Right, these are the people that go out to work. They're not great scholars, but they support their brethren. Eshkolos, Sheba, and the main part of the grapevine is, of course, the clusters of grapes. Elu Talmidei Chachamim. All in Sheba, the grapevine is also made up of leaves. Elu Amei Haaretz. So the leaves are on like one level below the branches. And these are the Amei Haaretz. I mean, they're not wealthy people. They're just people of the land. The leaves protect the grape clusters from the heat of the sun and the wind. So too the unlearned masses, plow and sow their fields. Yeah, I mean, they're not doing it for the purpose of supporting Torah scholars, but nevertheless, we owe them a debt of gratitude because, you know, they harvest their fields, and that produce will eventually sustain the Torah scholars. Knoknos Sheba. Okay, now he translates knoknos as tendrils. I guess another part of the grapevine. Elu Reikonim Shivi. So this is like the lowest level. These are the empty persons, meaning they don't have any mitzvahs, they don't have any zchuyos. And those are the different parts of the grapevine and the symbols. V'hainu t'sholchu mitam, from Eretz Yisrael they sent a message to Bavel, liboy rachmim iskalya al alya. We have to pray on behalf of even the leaves, dil mole alya, because even the leaves protect the grapevine. Lo miskaima iskilaya. So the clusters of grapes, which are called iskilaya, would not survive without the leaves. The Torah scholars, the clusters of grapes, should pray for the welfare of even the unlearned masses, the leaves. For if not for the unlearned masses who make food available to Torah scholars would not survive. The unlearned masses do not labor in the farm duties with the specific intention of benefiting Torah scholars. They're in the pursuit of their own interests. But since the Torah scholars benefit from their labors, that's sufficient to warrant the Torah scholars' gratitude and prayers. Okay, now we're looking at a pasuk in Hosea. Ve'ekreho li b'chamisha sar kesef b'chomer siorim v'lesach siorim. So ve'ekreho, for myself, 15 pieces of silver and a certain volume of chomer of barley and a lesser certain volume of barley. Omer Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rav Shimon ben Yotzadok Ein Kir. What does this word va'ekra mean? El Loshan Mechira. Miloshan Mechir comes from the word selling. Shenemar, as it says in the end of Bereishis, Sefer Bereishis, it says, Bekivri asher karisi li. In this verse, Yosef relates to Paro that his father Yaakov made him swear that he would bury him, meaning Yaakov, in the grave that he had bought for himself in Eretz Canaan. Yaakov paid his brother Esau for his share, for Esau's share in the cave, in the Moras HaMachpelah. What is Bechamisha Sar? Zeh Chamisha Sar b'Nisan shebo niglu Yisrael Mitzrayim. That's the day that we were redeemed from Mitzrayim. Kesef, Elu Tzadikim. There's a whole discussion here why the Tzadikim are called Kesef. And I think perhaps, the gist of it is that silver is a metaphor for the righteous because fine silver symbolizes purity. How one acts with one's money is integral to being deemed righteous. No person should be assumed to be righteous unless he is known to be righteous in his financial dealings. That's what we discussed yesterday when we spoke about Yaakov Avinu going back over the Abok for the Pachim Ketanim, if you remember. V'cheinu Omer, and now we have another pasuk, which is in Mishlei. Tzror HaKesef Lokach B'yado. He's taken a bundle of silver coins in his hand, and this is referring to the tzaddikim before the Churban Bayis Rishon. And then it says, Homer Siorim v'lesech Siorim. Oh, we read that before in the pasuk. Elu arba v'chamish tzaddik. 45. I always thought there were 46, but there are 45 tzaddikim that keep up the world. And we're going to have to understand where these 45 tzaddikim are, because we're going to divide them up into two groups, 30 and 15. Any yodea im shloshim kan, are there 30 in Bavel? And Chamisha Beretz Yisrael, or just the opposite, Shloshim Beretz Yisrael, v'Chamisha Osir Kan. Kshu Omer, v'echa Shloshim HaKesef, v'ashlicho so Beis Hashem El HaYotzer. This is a pasuk in Zechariah, that I took 30 pieces of silver that were given to me by Hashem. I threw it into the Migdash of Hashem, and that is referring to, of course, to Eretz Yisrael, where the Beis HaMikdash is, and the 30 pieces are referring to 30 tzaddikim. Have Yomer Shloshim be'aretz Beretz Yisrael, and therefore the other 15 are in Bavel. Kan, in Bavel. Omer Abaye, v'rubayu mishtakche bebei knishta detuse after. Right, there was a chamber that was located on the side somewhere on the side of a house. So it's a synagogue, not imposing, not large. And the people who prayed there were very humble people. So we would think that the 30 righteous people that keep the world afloat must have been well-known public figures. To the contrary, most of them are not well-known. Right there, the tzaddikim behester, and you'll find them amongst the people who sit in this modest synagogue, in the back of the synagogue. They don't sit at positions, what we call ebenon, of prominence and splendor. V'hainu d'chsiv, Va'omar aleim im tov be'einechem havu schari v'im lo chodu v'yishku eschari shloshim kosev. Okay, so again, the shloshim kosev, the 30 pieces of silver. Of Yehuda Omer elu shloshet tzadikim. Okay. So now we're sort of shifting a little bit here, and we're focusing here on the tzaddikim of the Umos HaOlam. So we have our 30 tzaddikim that keep up the world for the Jewish people, and the Goyim, the Umos HaOlam, have their 30 tzaddikim that keep up the world of the Umos HaOlam. Ula Amar Elu Shloshim, that the 30 of the Umos HaOlam is not a reference to the tzaddikim amongst the Umos HaOlam, says Ula, but rather to Shloshim mitzvah shekivu aleim b'nei Noach. Now, I'll mention Rabbi Menachem Mipano. He says that there are 7 mitzvahs that were given to b'nei Noach, but they branch out to a total of 30. So, for example, under idolatry, which is one of the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach, you have, Mavir es Yaldo b'Molach, passing a child through the fire of Molech. And many, many other prohibitions are subcategories of idolatry, like for example, the use of divinations, illusions, omens, sorcery, conjuring up insects through charms, consulting Ov, consulting a Yidoni, and it goes on and on and on. The total number is 30. If I'm not mistaken, there's a volume in the Encyclopedia Talmudit that at the end of the volume, they have the list of 30 according to different shitos. Anyway, the Ein Mekayim El Shlosha. So it's very interesting that I guess at some period of time, the Bnei Noach were very frum and they accepted upon themselves 30 commandments. But today, they're only Mekayim 3 out of the whole group of 30, like 10%.